I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for coming. And I just wanted to thank, as you'll see as we go through this presentation, there are a lot of images that come from the West Virginia and Regional History Center. I'm also incredibly grateful to the Art Museum at West Virginia University and for the scholarship that went into the book. Blanche Lazzell, Becoming an American Modernist. Before I forget, I just wanted to also talk about this book just for a second. Has anybody seen this? It's called The Club, Where American Women Artists Found Refuge in Belle Epoque, Paris, and it's by Jennifer Dazal. And this just came out in July, so it was really timely. And it will, as you'll see, it informed part of this lecture. Okay, so let's get started. So this first image here, as I was hunting around for an image of Blanche Lazzell's white lines, I wanted to find something I wasn't that familiar with. And this is actually, last time I checked, it was for sale. So you can inquire if you have an extra, $30, $50, $100,000 for it. But it's a really gorgeous example, and apparently there's only one of them. Clearly it was done here, Barn in the Dunes. So I'm going to start with a little information about Blanche's life. If you didn't get to see Stephen Orr's lecture, which was here about a month ago, just an amazing lecture. I really encourage you to see that as well, in terms of he gives a great foundation about her life. But I'm going to cover a few things before we move into the main focus of the talk. And actually, I'd just like to take a moment to say why I wanted to focus on this. As you heard, I'm an artist teacher. That's one of the reasons I was thinking about this. But also, I've never been in an exhibition of Blanche Lazzell's work where it's just her work. And that experience of seeing her work over time, over decades, and all of the changes that she went through was really powerful, and it brought up a lot of questions for me. It's not unusual to see an artist go through different phases, but it's almost feels mystical when you look at the transformation that she went through and the different types of work that she made. So part of this lecture is really going to be give her work historical context through the teachers that she worked with, the artist teachers that she worked with. And it was really fun for me to do. I hope it's fun for you to experience. So here we have a picture of Blanche's parents. That's Cornelius on the left and Mary Prudence on the right. And they were an old Virginia family. They still own the property where Blanche was raised. It was a 200-acre farm. They took over the land in the 1600s, so going back quite a ways. And Blanche was a very proud member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. This is a series of sketches that Blanche did of the property. And my favorite one is you can see on the left where it says schoolhouse. You can see all those tiny little people running into the house. From an early age, it's clear that she loves to learn. She loves to go to school. So it's not surprising that that's the most animated sketch on this sheet. This is the actual schoolhouse where she attended from about 1st to 8th grade. It's a one-room schoolhouse on the Lazzell property. And this is a picture of Blanche in the middle with her two sisters. On the left is her sister Bessie, and the right is Myrtle. And Blanche, obviously she's the middle of the three. She was the second to the last child. Bessie was the baby. And they maintained a very close relationship. And one of the things that really cemented this relationship was the fact that they lost their mother when Blanche was between 11 and 12 years old. So, and if anybody's ever, had a 12-year-old or worked with a 12-year-old as a teacher, you know that that's a very critical period of human development where you're figuring out who you are. So I've heard people wonder how it was that Blanche went on to do all of these things during this period. And I think part of it is really because, I keep feeling like she's listening, the sunlight keeps coming through, because of the loss of her mother and the fact that her primary role model and traditional role model was lost to her. So she became very close to her brother and to her younger sister. She was sort of a mentor and teacher to her younger sister. And I feel that loss was pivotal in shaping the course of her life, as it would be, but in particular that it just changed the way she moved through the world. So this is a self-portrait that I found online. It was posted by her family. It looks like it's a pastel drawing. And I'm wondering if it might have been done from a photograph. It has that feel to me. All right, so Blanche, when she's 15 years old, she leaves home and she goes to the Virginia Conference Seminary. So it's a secondary and preparatory school, and she's there for 4 years. And one of the things that we see in all of these photos is her love of joining in groups and organizations. And this particular one, there's no explanation for it, but they were called the Ruggles. So they each had fictional names. It was a family. One of them was Larry. I think Blanche was Susan. She's over there, and you can see her. And here's another one. This looks like it was some kind of skit. And on the back of this photo, it says, "The lads took the new lasses, and the old lasses were left to mourn." So they've all been ditched, and they're in mourning. They're wearing black. So this is after Blanche. This is her graduation day. And to me, this is a very solemn portrait. She doesn't look happy. And I really think it's because she's wondering what happens next after 4 years of connection and community. So she goes on and takes basically a semester at the South Carolina Co-Education Institute. And she graduates there. This is her graduation photo. And she goes on to teach for a school year in South Carolina. And one of the reasons that she goes there is right around when she's in the seminary, we start hearing about the fact that she is having hearing issues. She loses her hearing. And she's diagnosed in ways that, when you're reading about them now, and treated in ways that feel a little barbaric. I know Stephen talked about this as well. There was one treatment where they poured some kind of acid into her ears. So who knows how much worse the condition was made by the treatments, but one of the recommendations by the doctors is that she go to a warmer climate. So she goes up to South Carolina and she's teaching. But the other thing that I'm wondering about, because she didn't stay for more than that first school year, is how difficult it might be to teach with hearing issues in a one-room schoolhouse. I would think that would be a bit of a challenge. So here we're moving into Blanche's next phase of education. She, over time, she's able to convince her father to pay for her to go to West Virginia University, and she establishes relationships with important mentors and teachers. One of them is Eva Hubbard. Eva is a single mom. She's kind of one of a number of amazing role models. She is the first art teacher at the university, and she takes a class of about 37. It goes within a few years. She's got about 130 students. So she's very successful. She's, as it says, she teaches drawing and painting. And this photo just intrigued me. I wasn't able to find out who Joe Storff was, but it's around this time, and I absolutely love Blanche's expression. It's kind of like there's a joke that we're not completely in on. So here's another group that she was a part of. This is, I believe, the young women that she was living with in the dorm where she was staying. She also established important relationships with William Leonard and Martha Brock. And William, she took a number of drawing classes with him. She remained in contact with him for the rest of her life, basically, and she points to him as being a very important person in her life, especially when she goes to Europe. Martha Brock was her literature teacher, and she was a single woman and also made a big impression on her. So here we have another group that she was a part of, the Young Women's Christian Association, and Blanche is the second in front row. And I just have a few pictures. This is I'm assuming this is where the art classes were held. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what the campus looked like when she was there, one of the buildings. And this is a studio where Blanche would have studied, and she ended up actually taking over some of Eva's classes, teaching when Eva needed to be absent. So you get a vibe here of what it was like. It was very common for in art classes to be drawing from plaster casts. Actually, it still happens today. There's a lot of things about teaching art and being in art classes that haven't changed a lot over 100 years. It's interesting. You can still go to a gesture drawing class right here and draw the model. But at this time, they were drawing from plaster casts. So here we have a picture of Blanche. This is an unidentified group. I'm guessing some of them are family members. And I think that woman all the way to the right is Jo. Blanche worked in a photo studio for a few years. It was one of the ways she made money. And I'm wondering if there's some kind of relationship there between the work she was doing and this young woman. But she describes during this time how she feels sort of out of place. She's decided she wants to be an artist and that she wants to seek an education. And when she's amongst her family, she doesn't feel either here or there. She's not a woman yet because she hasn't married and isn't having children. And she's also, as you can see here, she's kind of small, and she recognizes that some of the children she's around are actually as big as she is. So she's kind of laughing, but also just feeling, where do I fit in here? And so she determines that she's going to go to New York and study at the Art Students League. And now we're going to look at some of the artists that she worked with. This is a photo from one of Kenyon Cox's life drawing classes. So this would have been the first time that she had the opportunity to draw from a live model. And as you can see, well, you may not be able to see, but the classes were segregated. So women had to be with women, and men could draw men and women, but women couldn't draw men. They weren't allowed. It would be shocking. And it was actually even shocking to be in the same class drawing. There was something a little too risque about having men and women in America drawing naked ladies. So this is an example. Here's Kenyon looking very stern and serious on the left, and this is an example of one of his drawings. This was done, he was commissioned to do a sort of an installation at the Iowa State Capitol. So this was a mock-up of one of the figures that he was going to be painting. And you really get the vibe. It's beautifully rendered. It's very realistic. It's idealistic as well. It's just this gorgeous woman, a naked woman who's supposed to be education holding a book. That's what it is. This is another painting of his. It's very illustrative of someone that some of you may know, August Saint-Gaudens. He was a well-known sculptor. And one of the things that happened at this time, still happens probably, is these teachers would end up falling in love with and also using students in their classes as models. So this is Louise Howard King Cox. She marries Kenyon. And I just wanted to do sort of a close-up and then the actual image of her. She is an artist, and I was happy to find out that she was able to continue. They had 2 kids together, but he respected her practice. She had her own studio in the house, and she was an artist while they were together and then after he passed. And here's a picture of Blanche the year that she's in New York, and an example of one of her drawings. So you can see she's really, one of the things that strikes me about everything that I look at her work is how gifted she is. She just sort of moves through all of these practices in a chameleon-like way. She's perfectly capable of mastering this type of drawing. So she's with Kenyon Cox in the fall, and then in January she starts painting with William Merritt Chase. Now, Chase is, at this time of his life, he's an art star. He's internationally renowned. He's very flamboyant. Blanche describes when she's taking a class with him that he scares her stiff. So he paints in this way. It's called premier coup, which means to first strike. So he's sort of attacking the canvas, and when he does demonstrations, they're very lively and at times intimidating. So one of the things he's known for are these fish paintings, and he actually, at a certain point in his career, he starts to worry that that's what he's going to be remembered for, just painting fish. But these paintings pay the bills. He gets between $1,000 and $2,000 for them at that time. So I looked it up, and it's over $70,000 for a painting. So, and he had 8 children, so he had a lot of mouths to feed. I was happy to find this is actually a picture of him painting this still life, and then the actual. So this is a study that Blanche did in his class, and you can see that she's mastering this ability to show the sheen of the metal, the volume, and she notes, you can see on the text there, that he tells her that this is in front of the class, that this is a wonderful example, and she's proud of that. So these are just a couple other images of his work. And one of the reasons I chose the painting on the left is it very much reminds me of a painting in the Pam collection by Hawthorne, and we're going to get to him in a minute. So he used his wife and his children all the time in his paintings, and this is also a student that was a successful portrait painter in her own right, Marietta Cotton. So the last one of his work that I'll show you is when he was working out on Shinnecock, which was a art school, a summer art school that he was invited to run. And I believe he started there in, I'm forgetting now, I think it was 1892. But he was there for about 10 or 11 years. And this is a shot, obviously, a painting of his family on the beach. Let me see. Okay. So Blanche is there until March, and she leaves suddenly, and it's because her father has passed away. These pictures, I don't know if you can see them better than I can, but these are taken the summer after she comes back, and to me there's this kind of sadness in the air when you look at particularly her face in between her, I believe that's Bessie and Bessie's son on the left, and then Blanche is in the garden reading. So for the next number of years, Blanche stays. She's back at home. She opens up a studio, and it's actually in the building, a building that her brother Rufus owns. She has learned how to paint china when she was going to the university. So she turns that into a business. This is an example of one of her pieces. And she does things like make whole sets of china and sell them. But she's gradually over time, she's making a profit to the point where by 1908, 1910, she's really turning quite a profit. And I believe one of the things that you find out about Blanche is that she was this crazy record keeper. She kept a record of all of her income and expenses. We know because of her how many blocks she carved, how many prints she made. And I think obviously part of the reason for the financial records is because she has to watch. She's really watching her pennies and making sure she has enough money. But she also has this prescient sense that she is going to be important, and everything that she saves is going to be of value. And so she's always instructing her sisters, save my letters, save my correspondence. And thank goodness that she did, because the experience of understanding her life is so much richer for it. I also think because Rufus, at this point, he's the one that's funding her. She's showing him, this is what I'm making, this is how much it costs, this is how, I'm working here, I'm helping towards my own care. So in 1912, she's wanted to go to Europe since about 1902. She has a teacher who's done the grand tour and shares everything with her, and she's been wanting to go for years. So she manages through her own saving and also through, I believe it's both her sister and her brother who helped to fund this trip, to sail for Europe in 1912. And this is the actual boat that she sailed on. It was fun to find that picture. I mean, it's a picture of the boat she sailed on. So she travels with this tour group. It's called the American Travel Club, and it's called Little Journey #1. And, for someone who's been to France once or twice, the idea that this was considered a little journey is kind of comical. I mean, they stop at the island of Madeira, then they go on to Gibraltar, they have to pass through the strait, and then they go to Italy and Switzerland, Germany, England, and Scotland. So she's making her way up with this travel club, and then by about August, she's anxious to travel to Paris and start her studies there. It's what she wants to do. She's determined that she's going to study in Paris and get everything she can from that experience. So here's an image of the Louvre from that time. Blanche took advantage of everything she could while she was there. She went to lectures at the Louvre, and when I was looking for a picture to illustrate this, I found out, I was thinking, well, she would have seen the Mona Lisa. It turns out that the Mona Lisa was stolen during that time, and it was missing for 28 months. They were able to recover it, obviously. It's there again. But it's strange to find that out when I don't know if anyone knows, there was just this major jewelry theft at the Louvre, so it's kind of odd the way things map up. So this is where the book that I mentioned really plays a key role in this lecture. Blanche, once she gets to Paris and she's settled in, she has accommodations. She didn't stay at the American Art Students Club. Her next order of business is to go and connect with every organization that she can. And one of them is the American Art Students Club. As you can see from what it says here, there are all kinds of things that happen there. There's, first of all, it's a residence. It's also a restaurant, and it was designed so that young women could afford to eat there. So it was just sort of this haven for young women. The woman who funded it, she was a society woman who had quite a bit of money and was married to the minister of France, and obviously from the United States. And so she had seen the poverty that some of the women living in Paris were under. I mean, they were literally starving. They could be living in spaces with no heating. The starving artist trope is it's real. So she was concerned about that and wanted to offer a place for young women to come where they would be safe, they would be well fed, and they could afford it. Because the other thing that's interesting about going to Paris and studying, women were charged twice as much as men. So it was really expensive to study in France. And there were a couple reasons that I read for that. One of them was the fact that they were believed to be supported by their families. So of course they would have more money than the men. And the other reason was to weed out the ones that weren't serious. So, or just plain greed. Who knows? So one of the things that happens that's really seminal for Blanche is she starts making connections with all of these people. They're going to be lifelong friends. Ethel Mars and Maud Squire. If you're embedded in Provincetown history and printmaking, you'll recognize their names. They were two of the six that are credited with creating the white line print. And so Blanche meets them. And in terms of connecting with women that are peers and role models, you know, they've come here, they've been living in Paris, I think since 1906, and they're established, they're making money. They were making money back in the States too. So to have that as a role models and also something to aspire to is very important. These are some of the prints that Ethel Mars was doing while she was there. And then these are the ones that Maud Hunt Squire was doing. They were friends with Marie Cassatt, and you can see there's a similarity with this type of printmaking. I believe this is a process called à la poupée, where you're hand applying color onto the plate to get those gorgeous colors. Okay, so she also meets Ada Gilmore there. She's still Ada Gilmore when she meets her. And this is just one of her white lines after she's been in Provincetown. This is another really lovely, I was able to find both the block and the image. I thought it would be fun for you to see. So this is after they've come back and developed this printmaking process. Mildred McMillan was also there, and they were actually, Ada Gilmore and Mildred were living at the club. And I don't think Mildred ever did color prints. I think they were, I think they were just black and white. And they're gorgeous. Good choice. All right. So this is another key figure that Blanche meets while she's there. Anne Goldthwaite has been in Paris. She's been living at the club since 1906. She's another gifted printmaker. This is an etching of hers, and she has a very interesting story. I just wanted to show you this painting that she did. So this is a painting that Anne did of sort of the outside the courtyard of the American Girls Club. And you can see that it feels sort of impressionistic with lovely glowing colors, very beautiful. But one of the things that happens with Anne, and it's also a good transition to really thinking about the context of what Blanche has put herself into as she's spending time in Paris, is Gertrude Stein and all of the modern art that's being created at that time, right? It's this huge, huge, and it just kind of boggles the mind, everything that's going on at once at this time. So Gertrude Stein lives nearby. Anne has been in Paris for about 6 days, and she's made friends with someone at the club, and they go and take a walk in the Tuileries. And so Anne describes seeing this woman with her dog, and she describes her as looking like a large brown egg with sandals on. And this woman says, "Oh, please come back to my home. I'd like to give you tea." And Anne's thinking, Anne's come from this sort of upper class Southern family, and she's thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if she has enough money to, she's worried about her basically. And so she gets to the salon, And it's the first time she's seen modern art. And so Gertrude, sort of tongue-in-cheek, says, so what do you think? And she's shocked. She's never seen anything like this work. So she makes an excuse and says, well, I can't really see it with the lights too low in here. So Gertrude tells her to get up on the table and look. And she's just flummoxed. I mean, she knows that it's art because it's in frames, but it's so outside of her understanding of what art is that she's trying to process what she's seeing. So at that point, the Picasso portrait of Gertrude Stein would have been on the walls. And she also, and then we can see, I'm going to show you pictures of two other pieces. So she says that this painting was in that space as well, which you can understand why this would be so life-changing to see a painting like this. And then also the Cézanne portrait of his wife. And if we went back, you could see on the back wall that it's hanging there. So to sort of getting an idea, I mean, Blanche, when she writes home, she often says it's very interesting, the work that she's seeing. She's not describing in detail kind of what it feels like to be experiencing this work, but we know she's into it. She's definitely really into seeing it. So just for a little background, going back and thinking about the father of modernism and cubism, Cézanne is recognized as being the forerunner. His work influences both Picasso and Braque, and you can see why that would be so. This is a late painting. He dies in 1906. So at this point, he's living in Aix-en-Provence, and he's done a series of these paintings of Mont Sainte-Victoire. And you can see by the way he's broken up the colors. And one of the things that really intrigues both of them is the way perspectives seem to shift while you're looking at his paintings. And the incredible palette and the vigorous brushstrokes, there's just so much to love here. So we've just got, so Picasso, like I said, he's right around the corner. This is a piece that he's done in 1912 that I particularly love. And it's a combination of painting and collage, which is a completely new thing to do. And apparently I read that rope was custom made for that. So, and then we have Braque. And you can see that this feels like a transitional piece if you've ever seen any of his paintings, his later Cubist paintings, where there's much less color. And so this still, to me, looks like a landscape. So Blanche, after she's made these friendships and connected with these clubs, and she's got her social milieu nailed down, she starts looking for schools, and she goes from school to school. There's so many schools to choose from. She would have heard back in the States, the Académie Julian was very well known at that point. So this is a picture, this is an earlier photo, but she checks that out. She ends up signing up for drawing classes at the, and if anyone speaks French in here, just apologies, but Académie de la Grande Chaumière. So she's working very hard. She signs up for morning classes, evening classes, and at times she even takes nighttime drawing classes. Here's another shot of a classroom. I don't think she went to the Académie BT, but so she ends up midway through this time period in January, she decides to join the Académie Moderne. And as the name of the school implies, it's more modern. They're moving outside of traditional approaches. And she starts studying with this artist, Guérin. And what's interesting, another thing that I found out is that Anne, the woman who met Gertrude Stein, helps found this school. She's directly involved with the founding of this school. So I'm wondering if she also talked to Blanche about taking classes here. So these are some, there's an example of a self-portrait of Guerin, and then this is a figure study that she would have done at that time. And you can see that she's sort of moving away. You're starting to see planes in the way that she's rendering the body. There's something it's a bit more abstract. These are just a couple of his paintings from before and later. And I think this is also an interesting example, the still life of, you know, again, as an artist, a young artist, you're showing your chops, you're painting these gorgeous reflective surfaces, and, you know, it's very appealing to me. Okay, so what do we have here? So this is the kind of painting that artists are starting to rebel against, right? And what's interesting is that both Guerin and Matisse studied with this painter, Gustave Moreau. These are paintings, they're figurative, they're considered symbolists, so we've got mythological themes, we've got religious themes. That's supposed to be Salome with the head of John the Baptist floating. I don't really know the story. I don't remember so I don't know if this is a constructed narrative where she sees John the Baptist's head. Does everybody know that story of Salome? She asks, apparently she's this seductive, amazing woman who dances, and people die for her dances, and so she says, well, okay, I'll dance for you, but you have to give me the head of John the Baptist. And they do. So during the last part of Blanche's time and this first trip to Europe, she's able to travel down to Italy, and she spends a period of days, I think it's 40 days total, where she's down in Italy, she's with her friends, she's drawing, she's painting, etc. And then as they're getting ready to leave towards the end of her time there, they take a quick trip up to Munich. And then they're able to see these amazing artists up there. One of them is Kandinsky, and so I wanted to show you it. By 1911, he's part of the group that's named after this painting. It's called the Blue Rider. This is another painting of his that's done from right around that time. And I thought this was a great quote. Our epoch is a time of tragic collision between matter and spirit, and of the downfall of the purely material worldview. So there's just a sort of a falling apart, the deconstruction of things that we value in the arts, we meaning women, men, people at that time, Western art. There's a serious questioning. There's a real connection with spirituality, and it's complex. So Blanche heads home. She's on the SS Arabic. And she goes back to West Virginia, and she's there for a while. She tries to open up she does. She opens up her shop again. She gets Bessie to help her mount exhibitions. She's trying to make a go of it in Morgantown. And I think she just figures out this is probably not going to be where she's going to get what she needs. So while she's there, she'd actually made friends with a woman named Stella Johnson in Europe whose family lived in Provincetown. And also, at this point, Ada Gilmore, I think Ada Gilmore's there. I think it's Ethel Mars who writes her a letter and says, come here, just come, it's great, you're gonna love it. So she does. In the summer of 1915, she comes to Provincetown. And she signs up for Charles Hawthorne's classes. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to show you all those chase pictures, other than the fact that she studied with him, is that Hawthorne also studied with Chase. And he goes with Chase out to Shinnecock. And at first he's there just as a student. Hawthorne does not have a lot of money. He actually has to work for 3 years. He comes from, I think his family is from Maine. And so he comes down to the city. He wants to study at the Art Students League. And it takes him 3 years to save money to be able to do that. He works on the docks at first, and then he also works in the stained glass studio. So this is a hard-working guy. And he impresses himself upon Chase. He becomes Chase's assistant out at Shinnecock. And there's some kind of plan for him to work for Chase in New York, and that falls through. They have a falling out. And thank goodness they did, because I don't know if he ever would have come here. So he decides, he goes to Europe, he does some studies in Europe, and then he comes back and he starts looking for a place to start his own school. And the thing, when I think about him, Chase's life must have looked incredibly glamorous on Shinnecock. They built him a huge house to live in with his large family, and he would work 2 days a week. One day he would do like critiques, and another day he would, do demonstrations. So it must have looked like a pretty good life for an artist. So here he is, he's come to Provincetown, he's set up this school, and Blanche has signed up for his classes. And at this time, I think it's interesting to see the kind of work that's being created. So he's doing studio portraiture like this that's inspired by the people of town, and this is in the Pam collection. And then he's also, this is attributed to him. It's what was known as a mudhead. It was a derogatory term for the type of painting that he would do outside. He was very invested in teaching by looking at the figure outside, using a palette knife, and just getting broad strokes of color down versus, fiddling around with draftsmanship. He was always talking about how colors abutted. And then this is a watercolor he did at the same time. So Blanche would have been doing this as well. And here's his own fish painting. You can see a resemblance. So he'd figured out a few things as well. Very similar palette. So these are two paintings by Blanche. And what I love partly is this is clearly two paintings that were done over a period of time. You can actually see that the pepper on the right has started to rot. It's got brown spots on it. And also the way the paint is applied and the color palette has evolved. I was really happy to find both of these versions. Clearly they're in different collections. One was for sale and the other one was purchased by the Johnson collection. Okay, so Blanche at the end of the season goes home. And as some of you know, that fateful winter, all of these artists decide to stay. And they come up with this printing process that we now celebrate called the White Line or Provincetown Print. And Blanche becomes a master at this process, but at this time, she's not here. She's missing what's going on. So I just wanted to show some examples. So BJO Nordfeld, BJO is credited with coming up with this process. And Ada Gilmore is the person who says, going on that he's the one who's created this type of printmaking. BJO is a gifted printmaker. He's studied traditional printmaking processes. The Japanese process it's called ukiyo-e prints or ukiyo-e prints that were developed in 16, 17, 1800s in Japan. And that process is the way that you get the colors in a print, or you use multiple blocks. Each block has a separate color, and it's a whole deal. Usually they're done in a studio where there's the person who has designed the block, and then there's the person who's cutting one of the blocks, and then there's the person who's inking the blocks. It's a whole deal. So he learns how to print make in that way. And Pam actually has an example of one of his prints that's absolutely gorgeous. So they come here, they're hanging out together, they're all gifted printmakers. He's credited with coming up with this process. Apparently he shows up with a completely done wood block. And they all start practicing in different ways doing these blocks. These are just some examples from around this time. So, as I mentioned, Ethel is a gifted printmaker. She's using a process where these are actually individual pieces of wood. It's almost like a puzzle. So it's not quite the same as the ukiyo-e process that I was talking about. The one on the right is a full-on white line print. And then these are Maud Hunt Squires, and these are, she is a bit different in that she continues to use what's known as a key block. All of those black areas, that would have been one block, and then the other colors were probably a second block. Okay. So Blanche comes back in 1916 to Provincetown. And she's considering studying with Hawthorne again, and then she goes, no, maybe not. And so she starts to study with Chaffee, and he's the one that teaches her the process. Now, I wasn't able to find out who taught Chaffee, but he ends up marrying Ada Gilmore, so I'm assuming it may have been her. I think temperamentally, from what I've read about him, he's a really nice guy. And I think, he just clicks. It's more intimate. It's not this thing where the teacher is handing down a critique at the end of the week after you've labored all day. So this is the actual block of one of his white lines. And there's a print. It's a very playful, sort of childlike in a way. And Chaffee had distinguished himself. He'd also been to Europe, which is another thing they would have had in common, and was influenced by the Fauves. And this painting that he did ended up in the Armory show, which was this major show in New York that basically introduced the United States to modern art. So just as a kind of a placeholder, Blanche goes on to make all of these wood blocks and all of these prints. And, she had a very high opinion of herself, and I have to agree with her. I just think they're the best. They're so beautiful. And one of the things that distinguishes her blocks is the way she abstracts forms and the flatness of the planes of the forms. They're just beautiful. In this particular print, it's kind of like these glowing jewel-like colors. Blanche decides that she wants to check out Birdcliff, which is another artist colony in Woodstock. And she studies with this guy, William Emile Schumacher. And he's been influenced by the Nobbies, which Bonnard is one of the painters in France that he's influenced by. And you can see this way the paint is applied, and also the way the colors are juxtaposed in his paintings. So Blanche, this is a picture that she took of him while she was there. Now these are two paintings that she did while she was there, and they look like they were set up inside as opposed to outside. One of them is in the show, and this one I found online. But you can also see, to me it's kind of this funny mashup, because on one hand, she's using the same types of application of the paint, but also the palette it feels more like a throwback. It's darker, the browns and the sort of the way the purples and the blues cancel each other out. But also, look at that glass. This is gorgeous. So Blanche is able to stay the winter. Her first winter is in 1918, and she's among friends. Ada Gilmore and Mildred are here, and I love this Christmas card. partly because you just know they're really cold. They're like tucked up against that wood stove, with their cat. Just, it's charming. So Blanche is able, she, as most of you probably know, she finds this fish house on the wharf in town. She converts it into a studio. At first, it's really bare bones, and people are afraid she's going to, freeze to death there. And then she ends up tearing it down and in 1925 and building another space for herself that actually has a stove in it. At that point, before she does that, she tries to convince her brother Rufus to help her buy a house. She's found a house and she's really excited, but he doesn't go for it. So she ends up staying on the wharf. So we're jumping now. During that time, that transitional time between 18 and 22, she's really digging in here. She's forming a printmaking group with other printers. She's showing her work. She's selling her work. She's really enjoying being here. And then in 1922, she does this painting, which you can see in the show next door. And to me, this is a really pivotal transitional painting. She's starting to apply aspects of abstraction, and also the palette feels like a fauvist palette, the colors. And there's just the way that she's playing with the buildings and the shapes that are both flat and then moving. So there's a lot of dynamism in this painting. And the other thing that's so cool about this is that in the show there are 4 additional pieces with the same thing. There's 2 wood blocks and 2 prints. And so you get to really see her process, how she's moving through. So in 23, she is able to go back to Paris. And at this point, she's determined that she's going to really study modernism. This painting is done later. It's done in 1929, but it's in the Pam collection, and it's one of my favorites. And that's a picture of Blanche on her birthday in Paris, and she's 45 years old. Yeah. So she's picked the creme de la creme to study with. Basically, she's studying with Leger and with Lotte and with Glaze, who are all like heavy-duty modernists at this point. She starts with both Lotte and Leger. She's drawing, etc. So these are examples of Leger's work. So you can see that on one side we've got a really straight-on abstract piece, and then he's starting to move into figuration again as this really cool mashup. When I think of him, the paintings on the right are what come to mind. So this is Andre and one of his drawings from around that time. So he also is moving away from pure abstraction and applying it. I can't say for certain. What I've seen when I've been looking at these artists is that they keep moving back and forth. They're not doing it's not this progression necessarily. And you see that in Blanche's work too. There's one painting where it's like, where did that come from? It's completely outside of all the abstractions that she's doing at a certain point. So these are a couple of his paintings. And I'm wondering if this Ladies of Avignon is a nod to Picasso. If these two are, working women on the street. So the person who really has the most impact on Blanche's life out of the 3 is Albert Glaze. She really connects with him. I think, from what I've read about him, he was a very reluctant teacher. There's a story about how 2 painters from Ireland come and hunt him down and insist that he teach them. So he starts teaching, and it's also understood that Blanche probably saw some of all of their work the last time she's in France, right? So she starts to study with him, and you can see this is a painting from 1920. There's clearly some similarities between this and the work in the gallery. And then this is an earlier painting of his from 1914. So this is a really lovely drawing that's in the Pam collection that's from her time with him. One of the things that he would do for her is he would write onto her drawings because she had trouble hearing him. So she's got this lovely document of what he's saying to her on this drawing that she's done as a preparatory sketch for a painting. And it says that it's dense, it's can you see what that says? It's like dense, it's powerful, you know, it's complex. So he's complimenting her. And he also tells her that she paints like an angel. And who wouldn't want to study with someone who tells you that? So this is one of Blanche's paintings. It's in the show. And this is a quote. She's communicating with her sister, Bessie. And there a lot of the wonderful information that you get about the way Blanche thinks is through seeing her correspondence with her sister. And Bessie's trying to make a connection between Blanche's work and this very traditional painter whose name I can't remember. So she's writing back and saying, she's explaining, our painting is more creative. We make our own forms and colors or are inspired from nature. In our work, the forms and colors must be so related to make unity, rhythm, balance, etc. A piece of music is a composition of sounds. Our painting is a composition of color. So now we're going to jump. So we're during this period of time between when she's doing this type of work and we're covering about a 10-year period. During that time, there's the Depression. She suffers a number of personal losses. Her brother dies. Her sister's only child dies. And she has a very dear friend in Provincetown named Simeon Smith, who's a professor and who was from West Virginia. And she had a very deep connection to him, and he passes away too. So within a period of a year, she goes through these losses. And then she's also struggling, like everyone else, to recover during this time of financial instability. So she ends up getting involved with the WPA. She goes down to Virginia. She does a bunch of prints down there. And so, but she's maintaining a connection with Provincetown as well. And when Hoffman comes to town, she gets interested. Here's someone that she knows that she can have a connection with, and she does. They end up becoming friends. So this is a picture of him teaching in a class with figure drawing. And again, the approach and the ideas are different, but the approach is the same, the ideas are different. So you're still drawing naked ladies, right? But you're getting a very different outcome. So she's at this point between 59 and 60 years old, and she starts drawing with him. And I love this particular drawing of hers because, like the glaze, it's got all of his markings on it. We can see all the pluses and minuses here, and it's actually sort of counterintuitive because all the places where you would expect the body to project outward, the knee, he's got negatives. And then all the places that you would think of as receding in a traditional picture plane, he's got positives. So he's really talking about this idea of the push and pull, this dynamic on the picture plane that you're trying to achieve, whether you're looking at a figure or you're looking at a still life. One of the things that he did in his classes is he would set up a still life at the beginning of the summer and it would just stay there the whole summer. So the expectation was that you were going to keep going back and looking and looking and looking. And you can see from these two examples that that's exactly what Blanche is doing. he was known, you know, he would come up and he might rip your drawing in half or in multiple pieces because he was trying to explain these dynamics of movement. And what I think happened with this one is that Blanche actually went in and cut it. Because if you go and look at the original in the show, those are sharp lines. So I don't think he was walking around with scissors. I have a feeling that she started playing around and trying to move the objects. So here's Blanche in 1951. She's back in New York City. She travels back and forth. She goes to New York. She actually visits Hoffman there. And this is a picture of her in front of the church that's also featured in this painting. And I love it. There's not a lot of pictures of her smiling, full-on smiling, and this is one of them. So it makes me happy. Blanche passes in 1956. She's on the Cape. She gets brought down to the hospital in Bourne, and it sounds like she's there alone. Her family can't make it to her in time. So, and then she's brought home and she's buried next to her father in West Virginia. Thank you so much.